Welcome back to another episode of Roundtable Discussion. Today, our topic, it's a pretty controversial one. There's going to be some fighting. I can just feel it. Today, we're going to tell you who the best leadership Liberal candidate is.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Well, we're going to tell you who we think the best Liberal leadership candidate is. And today we're joined by the big boss man himself right here, Vern Riddle.
You should maybe add in there that I'm just kind of in between both of you guys as a moderator today.
Referee,
yes. Just in case things got out of hand here today.
He has a taser. He's not allowed to show it, but he has a taser. In case anybody gets out of hand, I'm looking at you, Cullen. And then, of course, Cullen has joined us, one of the original master debaters, back again. This time he's got boxing gloves. He's even brought his laptop, so he's been brushing up. I'm a little worried. I got nothing. Oh, well, bringing the knife to the gunfight, I guess.
I believe in you.
Oh, Cullen. Wow.
We have to start off with something nice before we delve into something mean, I suppose.
That's very true. And, today I thought we would kind of have two different opinions. One is who do we think will win the Liberal leadership race? And then the other one would be who do we think should win the Liberal leadership race? Who will win in actuality, but who would we see if we could pick? Who would we nominate as our personal Liberal leader, best Liberal leadership candidate? And we'll see where we go from there. I think we should put it to our moderator to kind of give us an outline of who's in the race.
Sure, I'll give an overview. And I just want to kind of state here, we've been kind of discussing this for the last few days, and depending when this program airs, there could be some few new candidates add their name into the leadership race. So I find that every day it goes on, we find out there's a new person getting their name added. So,
I changed my mind.
So the leadership race is taking shape with several candidates announcing their bids to replace, as we all know, Justin Trudeau. That's who is that guy now? It's been a couple of weeks now.
Never heard of him.
As the leadership election is set to conclude on, as of saying right now, March 9th, 2025, the new winner expected to become the 24th Prime Minister of Canada. So let's go through, I guess, some of the contenders that, as of today, we know that have put their name into the leadership race. So one of the big ones, I think, actually was probably, from my understanding, I think it was the first person that announced who was going to be,
the guy that went all the way to America.
The person that kind of went on to America TV to announce that they were going to be in the leadership race for the Liberal Party.
That makes sense.
Hey, but might as well start off in a country that's not able to vote for you. So the first one we'll throw up is Mark Carney. A little bit of background about Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of Canada, Bank of England, officially launched his campaign party on January 16th, 2025 in Edmonton. He's positioning himself as a candidate who will get our economy back on track. Apparently he has experience from being the governor of the Bank of Canada, obviously through economic times.
Where was he when the economy was...
He's an outsider, so apparently he is signed up as a Liberal candidate. My knowledge is from what I heard is that he's provided some guidance to Justin Trudeau. So as Pierre Poilievre or the Conservative Party states him as carbon tax Carney, apparently he was had a lot to do with the carbon tax that was brought in on Canadians. Obviously we know the popularity of that, how well that's been going with Canadians. So,
big winner.
Mark Carney. First person to put his name in the running, and I just thought it was strange. Although I guess he kind of grew up from Edmonton, so that's why he named did his campaign in Edmonton. Interesting, because I don't think there's too much red going in Alberta as of at the moment.
I'm pretty firm no.
There's not a lot of red anywhere. The next Liberal leadership has to face with the real possibility of an overwhelming defeat. So,
Yes.
There's some personal fortitude inherent in anybody who's willing, considering the polls, anyone who's willing to put their name up to this election. I may disagree with them individually, or maybe not, but they have cojones. That much is certain. The by all polls, this next election is pretty close to a runaway victory for one political party, and a horrible, humiliating defeat for another political party, and to put your name up as potentially in line for that humiliating defeat. Well,
it takes guts.
Because
guts, yeah.
Really,
maybe for some of the older viewers, I mean, I myself was not around when this happened, but in 1980, what was it, 1983, 1984, when Brian Mulroney, when Brian Mulroney and the Conservative Party came in against John Turner and the Liberals, smoked them. They swept every single province, including Quebec, and the Liberal Party crashed and burned as probably, I think, their worst defeat ever in a Canadian federal election. And this is setting up to be almost the exact repeat of it, and it's quite ironic considering that Brian Mulroney Conservative victory came after over a decade of Pierre Trudeau being in power, and then now you have Justin Trudeau being in power for almost a decade, and now you're going to have a Conservative Party come in and almost sweep the floor again.
Wait a minute. Are you saying history repeats itself? Oh my God!
Who would have thunk it?
What? No, I don't believe it. I still don't believe it.
But I agree. I don't think. It doesn't matter, I don't think, who the Liberals put in as their party leader, because the odds they're going up against are ridiculous.
So I'm going to guess that with that comment saying that any basically Liberal leader that's running for this leadership race, you've been under Justin Trudeau for close to 10 years, you're probably thinking, what's going to change having a new leader, since they're, at this point, you would think that any candidate running is going to be no different than Justin Trudeau.
It's hard to think otherwise, because even though Carney kind of labels himself as the outsider, he still has that kind of tie in with the Trudeau government. And then, of course, Freeland, of course, they were pretty much tied at the hip until just this past December.
One candidate at a time.
Yeah. You're throwing my next candidate away here. That was my next one on my list, since you've already kind of threw it out to the people watching, to our viewers today.
I wasn't trying to spoil the list, but speaking in terms of...
It's hard to find a good master debater these days.
Only on WCGtv will you find the most quality master debaters. But I don't know. How I see it, it doesn't matter who they put up. I think, because you can have a go at Justin Trudeau for whatever it is, whether it's the carbon tax, the cost of living, housing, immigration, whatever you want to have a go at him at. I think the number one thing people have is just voter fatigue. It seems like 10 years is kind of the maximum that most parties have in Canadian politics until people are just sick of them, right? I think you've only had one prime minister that served over 20 years, I think, who was able to remain to remain popular. So I don't know. I just think voter fatigue is just going to be the thing that does them in above all else. And I think all the things that people mainly lump against Trudeau are just icing on a really bad cake.
Well, and in all fairness, when you have most of these leaders, with the exception of one that has all been part of the Liberal Party for the last 10 years, and all of a sudden coming in and saying that, oh, we forget what happened in the last 10 years, we're going to come out with new policy. You voted on all of these policies and everything for the last 10 years. You were all for what happened. Now you want to say that, you're going to change the ways things have been. Obviously different leadership, but that's where I think that kind of sticks with me as far as under that.
Yeah, and if I had to choose my two, who's going to win and who I want to win, I, strangely enough, even though Carney is leading the polls, I don't actually think he's going to win the leadership race.
Interesting.
And the biggest reason that some people might not be aware of is, as you spoke of, he calls himself an outsider, but his signatures aren't our money. To call yourself an outsider blows me away. And I don't like his mannerisms, his way of interacting with the public. It was his biggest criticism when he was the Bank of England when he was running the Bank of England, and Brexit was ongoing, and of course they wanted the public wanted the governor of the Bank of England to make some comments, and none of his comments were well received. He just isn't a personable fella, you know. He's not somebody that comes across well on TV when he's public speaking. I've watched a few of his interviews around the States and around Canada, and I can agree with that. I don't think he is a very personable fellow. I don't think he comes across with as a likable person, the kind of person that the average voter can trust, sight unseen, because, you know, we don't really know everything about him. But I think that'll be enough. I think that'll be enough to remove him, even though he's got some incredible ties. He's an investment banker, and he's part of the UN climate change special envoy. So he's got friends in high places. There's no doubt about that, and I suspect that's why he's having such success in the polls, because he's a natural to follow Mr. Trudeau. But I don't see him being in the final race. I don't see him being the Liberal choice, and time will tell. But that's my. I can't agree with everything Colin says. I mean, I got to disagree with something.
Disagree with it.
Yeah. So that's my. That's going to be my position: is that Carney will not win the leadership race.
Well, it's interesting because I'm going to throw some numbers at you. So, according to the opinion polling from Liberal supporters of who they think will, well, you know, just the polling of who's going to be the next leader, there was a poll just conducted on January 13th. And now, admittedly, this sample size is small. It's only 280 people they sampled from, so it's not as high as, because I will preface this by saying that, like, there was an opinion polling that was also done. It was labeled as all Canadians, and then there was one that was just Liberal supporters. And so from January 13th, I think it's the polling firm, I think it's Ledger. I think that's how you pronounce it. Leger, maybe. Out of Liberal supporters, Mark Carney has a narrow but pretty decisive lead at 27%. The next closest one being one that we will get to soon, but I won't spoil the name. But interestingly, because you have, you know, out of the, you know, out of the 8 Liberal MPs that were polling, there was a other or undecided option, and 30% say they still don't know, which is higher than every single candidate. Now, admittedly, it has just started. That's fair. Not a lot of people know, but I think Mark Carney will win because, yes, he's an outsider in the sense that he's not a true politician. Sure, his name's on the money, and maybe he has some ties with Trudeau, but I don't think he's like, you know, he wasn't officially. I mean, forgive me if I'm correct, if I'm wrong, but he wasn't officially in the House.
He hasn't been elected to anything.
He hasn't been elected to anything. So I think that distinction, might make him pull away, even though he is, like we were saying, he still has ties with Trudeau. He's just not. He doesn't have as close to a tie as Trudeau as another person has to Trudeau. That's also in second place.
The one who shall not be named.
The one who shall not be named.
So I will throw this out to you guys, as you already mentioned. Mark Carney does not have a lot of a political background. Do you think, you know, maybe that's kind of part of Kevin's thinking? Maybe he thinks, well, somebody's coming in, wants to be Liberal leader with very little political experience. Do you think that will play a factor on what Canadians would believe as the next Liberal leader?
I think it'll have an effect in that. Okay, let's be honest. Going into this election, there are a lot of issues that are going on right now in Canada. And there's a lot of complexity and there's a lot of nuance to it. Someone who has zero political experience and who's never been elected to it, do you think they are going to come in and just? I mean, that sounds maybe ignorant, perhaps, but like, do you think someone who has no political experience will just come in and be able to understand and fix all those the complexity and the nuance? I don't think so.
Well, I think there's an argument to be said that a fresh face might, if there's enough distance between them and Trudeau, it could have an effect. Like there's a few backbenchers that are throwing their names in. and a few people that were considering and then dropped out. And I think there's a surprise coming down the pipe. And I think that 30% of undecided voters that you referred to, if I was a Liberal backbencher or maybe out of the sphere of, public, if I was out of the public eye, I would look at that 30% and go, the right person could capture all of that 30%. It's just nobody has seen anybody they like, and those 30% are saying, I don't like anybody yet. I'm still waiting for somebody that I can vote for. So if the right person gets in, says the right things, that 30% is up for grabs. So I think there's a surprise coming down the pipe, and somebody that maybe we're not even going to talk about today is going to announce and probably maybe win.
Well, this might put you on the spot, but I'll throw this at you. With the 30% undecided, assuming that someone was able to come in and sweep all of that 30%, what would a politician have to do or say, or who would it have to be that could wrangle such a high amount of people who are undecided?
Well, it's going to have to be somebody that can appeal to the middle of the there's a left and a right sort of spectrum that we all use. Right. And each party kind of picks and chooses their policies out of that spectrum. And I suspect that somebody that had a more centrally focused platform could probably steal that 30%. And I think some of the platforms of the leaders that have come forward already are still a little bit too far to the left for the general population. The carbon tax being a huge one. In Canada, nobody wants to get taxed for heat. Like, it doesn't even seem a reasonable position for Canadians to pay a heat tax, because it's not like we have a choice. Winter is just something we have to suffer through, and then to know that the government is there making sure you suffer just a little bit harder. That's not a popular opinion. So I can see how distancing yourself from the carbon tax might be, strangely enough, a Liberal win. But we're just going to have to find a candidate that's got the cojones to do something like that. And I'm not sure if there is one or not.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, because you talk about the carbon tax, and I think we've heard loud and clear that most Canadians don't agree with the carbon tax anymore. And I think most Canadians agree that 8 out of 10 Canadians don't get more money back. So as you look on to bring on a overall election of Canada, obviously Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have mentioned that they're going to axe the tax. It's kind of what, axe the tax, carbon tax election is kind of what they're going by. So, that's what their whole...
Right, and you bring up a good point. If a Liberal candidate were to come out with a platform that involved axing the tax, it would nullify the Conservative advantage. So that it steals a little bit of the Conservative base, appeals to centrist voters, and like you say, 8 out of 10 people will probably jump on board that platform if they're predominantly a Liberal voter.
And I have to agree with you on that point, saying that I think if you're having one of these Liberal leaders, when we get more into announcing some of the other leaders, if one of the leaders did say they were going to drop the carbon tax, I'm going to assume there would be obviously a lot of people in favor for that. So you make a very valid point for that.
Woohoo! I got one. That's it. I'm out of here.
But my other, I guess, rebuttal would be, you've voted in this carbon tax under the leadership of Justin Trudeau. Are many people think that the carbon tax is going to be dropped, or is it going to be renamed something else, or brought in as a different perspective?
Well, it's kind of funny you say that, because
here we go.
Mark Carney has claimed that he's going to replace the carbon tax with something more effective at reaching carbon neutral targets. Vague, obviously. So, I don't know.
Carney is known for having significant investments in the oil and gas industry. And he's publicly stated that even with a net zero objective, you still have to diversify your investments into gas and green technologies. So he does have a bit of a history of playing both sides. So that statement out of him fits along that narrative.
Okay, as we move on here, I think we're ready to announce our second candidate here, which is
who could it be?
no shock to most Canadians within the last few weeks, as she has resigned from her position. But Chrystia Freeland is now former Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, is running on her experience, particularly in dealing with U.S. relations, as she released a campaign video highlighting her negotiation skills with Donald Trump. And if I recall correctly, Donald Trump is scared of her, I think, is kind of, I can't quote if that was her exact words, but
she is a little scary.
Apparently she's a great negotiator, and she's going to have discussed all these, the tariffs with Donald Trump, and she will, basically has the full understanding, and Donald Trump will be scared of her. So I guess Chrystia Freeland, no surprise to Canadians on her balancing the budget, or, well, and under Trudeau's words, the budget will balance itself.
All right, but the real question is, Freeland, Trump, mud wrestling. Are you buying a ticket?
I'd be interested in that. I would certainly go pay-per-view for that.
You should have seen Cullen's face. So
you know what? Don't picture it in your mind. Just think of as, would people pay to watch this? Absolutely, they would.
But the second the camera goes on Trump, everyone's going to shut their eyes. I don't know if you want to see that.
Great TV. It makes great TV.
It'd be like Borat.
Fair point.
Well, to get this debate off to a good start, I'm going to put it out there that Freeland is my pick for the Liberal leadership race. Not that I think she should win, but I think she will win. And I think she will win based on the separation, the rift that existed when she walked away and said, I'm done, I'm out of here, I quit. I think that's the amount of separation that people need to see from Trudeau to convince them that she's got a better direction to take the country than Trudeau's direction, evidenced by the fact of that rift that she said.
You're kind of thinking of her departure because the way things ended there, that she will have more people more on her side.
People believing that she has a different plan than Trudeau because she did walk away from Trudeau and said, I'm out of here. So I think that'll win her some points with the Liberal base. Whether she can come up with the rest of the platform that it takes to get all of the centrists on board, that remains to be seen. But she does have, she's been elected. She has held prominent positions in the government. And she does have a track record of not agreeing with Trudeau. And I think those ingredients, she's off to a good start. And if she can relate with voters better than Carney can, possible. Carney does have some issues there. So does Chrystia Freeland, though. She doesn't always represent herself favorably on camera. But I suspect some media training, who knows what might happen.
Well, I think, we're talking about, who the next Liberal leader should be, but I think I agree, I think, with that. Her split from Trudeau, I think, could be enough to kind of give herself maybe like that edge to win or to become the party leader. But I think in the grander scheme of the actual election itself, I don't think it'll be.
Oh yeah,
that's not going to be enough. But again, we're speaking on the party leader. But I think it's an interesting kind of dichotomy between Carney and Freeland, in that you have Freeland split from Trudeau, and even some articles have claimed her and Trudeau didn't treat each other well, whatever that means. But then you have this whole thing with Carney being a political outsider in a sense. So it's like who do you weigh up more, like the one who actually split from the current unpopular prime minister, or the one who has had no political affiliation with Trudeau? It offers an interesting kind of scale of who do you go for in that scenario.
Well, and kind of an interesting discussion that was kind of made when Chrystia Freeland announced her resignation was possibly her replacement was going to be Mark Carney to be the finance minister. So you add in more kind of, turmoil into the whole situation. Whether that was the case or not, I don't know if that would ever come out or not. I haven't really, that would be obviously a question that might be brought up to Mark Carney, whether that was, some of the discussion that he would be the next finance minister. But there was certainly a lot of discussion around that. So it makes it interesting, certainly between Mark and Chrystia anyways, as far as whether there's some bad blood there or not. I'm not too sure, but
It'd probably be a good finance minister. It looks like a finance minister.
well, being the governor of Bank of Canada and Bank of England,
Yeah.
obviously, certainly his
Kind of fits.
financial background probably be a good fit. Obviously, Mark Carney was very close with Justin Trudeau on some of the taxation that was taking place. I believe on the carbon tax and the capital gains tax. I believe that they
Yeah.
had some input on that. So, obviously, it was a possibility. I'm sure that there was some discussion on that, but.
Well, what else is there anything else about Chrystia Freeland that you got the big hardware over there. What else we got on Chrystia Freeland?
I can talk a little more about, again, the polling numbers, since I can say her name now. But again, that same poll I was talking about, the Leger January 13th poll, Chrystia Freeland polled at 21% to Mark Carney's 27%. So close-ish. But interestingly enough, there were 4 polls conducted on January 7th, before December 25th, the 22nd, and then all the way back on September 22nd, all of which were done from Liberal supporters, with very comparable sample sizes around that 200 to 300. But in those 4 previous polls, Freeland was the top polling person then. Admittedly, it was a lot of it was pretty close with Mark Carney, but this is the first time where Mark Carney's kind of one-upped her in that regard. And I think that's just because, she had a split with Trudeau, but I think because of the fact that she was up kind of, again, tied at the hip with Trudeau like until December, I don't know. It's hard, I think, for people to kind of separate the two when she was like, his ally like until just a month ago.
She was his right-hand man.
Exactly.
Right?
So it's not enough time. Like if we were having this, like if this all was just like happening like 2 years afterward and she'd been split with Trudeau for 2 years, I think people can maybe make a more comparable split between them or see past the Trudeau thing and, but I think just being after a month, I don't think it'll be enough to kind of get that Trudeau stench off of her, if you want to use that word.
Well, you make some good points. She does have a bit of a little stench on her, but I think that she has enough, what would you call it, influence amongst the liberal, the liberal insiders. I suspect because she's been doing the job for so long, she's made a lot of relationships, and I suspect that she has a lot of support from the liberal insiders that Carney isn't going to be able to muster. It's going to shake up, like you say. I think it'll be a dead heat between the two, and it'll probably come down to a coin toss. The only thing I think is that she has some diversity qualifications that might give her an edge, and like I was saying, Mark Carney looks like a finance minister. I don't know if people are ever going to see him as a prime minister. It's in the eye of the beholder, of course, but I don't see him as somebody that we would want to represent our country. He doesn't have that stature to him. And Chrystia Freeland used to have it. I haven't seen it from her in any of her recent publicity engagements. But when she was just starting to get into politics. She had a certain fire about her that I think appealed to the voters back then. And if she can find it again and maybe rekindle it a little bit, I think she's going to have what it takes to pull off the victory in this one.
Well, actually, the polls I was talking about were just exclusively from Liberal supporters, but at looking at the polls that were just conducted from, all Canadians, the same Leger poll from January 13th with a sample size of 1,500, interestingly enough, Freeland is leading the poll, but only at 14%. Mark Carney is second with 13%, and 46% don't know.
And there's the don't know vote, which somebody is going to just walk up and say, how about me in those 40%?
But interestingly enough, in that other undecided category, you have 46% they say don't know, but 14%, the same amount as Chrystia Freeland, they say someone else.
Really?
Of course, that's someone else. Who knows? It could be, amongst some of the people who have dropped out. But it's been interesting. And I suspect what we're not hearing is probably a party that's in turmoil. Internally, there's probably a lot of dust in the air, for lack of a better word. It's going to take time for all of that to settle. Everyone's realigning who do I support. All of these decisions have to be made in short order, so no one's coming out publicly because they want to wait and see how it all settles out. But I think she's got a lot going for her from a Liberal point of view. I think she's got a lot going for her, and I think she even has a little bit more than Mark Carney does. But I think we've talked about Chrystia enough.
We can move on. Yeah, and like I said, at the end we'll kind of do a recap here, because obviously at the very lowest polling support in, was it 16%, I guess, for the overall Liberals, I think it was 16 or 20% was the last of the polling. Is there any one of these candidates be able to turn things around for this Liberal Party, because they are at such low, and we can certainly discuss that later on as we go through the candidates, but I guess that would be the one thing for Canadians. Is there any one of these candidates that can turn things around?
Nope. Sorry. I wanted to do that just for the joke. But when you look at popular vote projection and seat projection federally, now, of course, this is as of right now, before anyone has been elected. And, of course, when it gets close to election time, even despite large leads, that gap always seems to close no matter who is popular or unpopular. But as of right now, it is just so mind-boggling just how much of a decisive lead the Conservatives have had since the summer of 2023. Really? For that long, they've had a stranglehold over the odds. For example, the odds of reaching 172 seats, enough for a majority, the CPC has a 99% chance.
Wow!
And then projected seats by for the political parties, the Conservatives are estimated at around 238 seats as of now.
Insane.
That, I don't know what even say to that. Even if the Liberals and the Bloc were to form a coalition, they would only, with the current poll projections, only about 83 seats.
Wow.
Measly 83 seats. And even if you look at some of the polls, in terms of actual overall seat projection, the Bloc and the Liberal Party are teetering around the same amount, and the Bloc only has seats in one province. Yeah. Which is quite a damning
kind of gives you the outcome of what Canadians are looking at, isn't it?
So
it's going to be a fun one. All right, who's next?
So for the next third one, which I look at these as the top three that most Canadians are going to know, and I would say the top three at who will be the next leader for the Liberal Party. So Karina Gould. Gould is the youngest candidate in the race at only 37. That's
wow.
37 years young, and she announced her candidacy just the other day on January 18th, emphasizing the need for a new generation of leadership to rebuild the party's brand.
I have to refresh my memory on Karina.
To do the same, because under her little section here on the website I've pulled up, there's not really much kind of under her name in terms of her policies, but she was the leader of the government in the House of Commons from 2023 to 2025, and she was the Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development. Okay, so looking at a background, for example, I think like the Minister of like Families and Children and Social Development, I would think she could have an appeal, perhaps, if you are raising a family, you know, like if the cost of living crisis is obviously a pretty big problem for a lot of people, and if you have children, it's probably not a whole lot better. So I think maybe her connection to that could swing some voters, but it also could swing votes against her because of the cost of living. I think just the cost of living alone would dampen her grade, even if that didn't have much to do with it. But being only 37, that's pretty young for any politician, really. I mean,
yeah, that qualifies as a fresh face.
Absolutely.
Which maybe is the missing ingredient in this leadership race. It's really hard to tell. I can't wait for the next poll to see how she shakes out, because what we don't know is what her relationship is with the rest of the Liberal Party. So, you know, we don't know if she is known for working well with others. We don't know what she's like behind closed doors in the cabinet or in the caucus meetings. I find her to be the most interesting person that has put their name forward. And it's just a shame that I don't really know much about her. She's been fairly quiet. Have you heard her name?
I've heard her name, and I've watched some of the when they in the ledge, when like she obviously was the she spoke a lot of times when Trudeau wasn't available and stuff. So I did see her speak, and you know, obviously she's I would say needs a little bit more experience against the Conservative Party on some of the rebuttals, but overall I think she definitely has, you know, she's obviously a fairly young, fresh face into the Liberal Party and branding that new generation. If she's trying to kind of rebrand the Liberal Party to more of a, you know, a situation where they can, you know, attract more people again, rather than, you know, right now everybody's looking at the last 9 years, and you look at the housing crisis and the immigration problems and health issues and the healthcare in general. There's a lot of, you know, just standard cost of living is that. I think that's the big thing on Canadians. How can we change this so that, you know, you look at, we have the highest, you know, in Canada right now, you have highest people going to food banks and poverty and crime, and there's a lot of things that need to be fixed. So, you know, if she can kind of get her spin on things, I guess. To me, I honestly didn't realize she was 37. So to me, it's nice to have, you know, a young person come into politics and have their...
It's refreshing.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw a point. So when Justin Trudeau first became elected, I remember a lot of the things that I remember hearing quite a lot. You know, Trudeau, he's such a young, healthy face. He's such a young person. We've been through this before.
He's just not ready.
We've been through this before. I think with Gould's age, I just think that might unfortunately just kind of be another byproduct of that, unfortunately, because now you're going even younger than Trudeau was when he was first elected. So I don't know. I think that might kind of sway against her, because I mean, someone would obviously just pull the inexperienced card. But she has been an MP since October 2015. Like, she came in at the same time as the Trudeau government did, and she served as in a ton. Like, for a couple of years, like, she was, you know, the Parliament Secretary, Minister of Democratic Institutions, Internal Development, and then the Families, Children, and Social Development. So she's like jumped around a lot of different roles.
Yeah, which could be good or bad. You know, we don't really know what caused all of the internal rotations, and I think that one transfer was considered a demotion, right? From what was the departments that you listed off there again?
Well, there was a couple. There was the Parliament Secretary, Minister of Democratic Institutions, the Minister for Internal Development, Families, Children, and Social Development, and then there's her most recent role as the Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Yeah, so did she lose those appointments then?
there's big blocks of information here. I would have to kind of, maybe if you guys want to talk amongst yourselves.
I just remember reading that she had received a demotion during her time in office, and it was from one, cabinet position.
Well, she might have obviously got shuffled too when there was like the whole cabinet shuffle. So she might have not necessarily got demoted because think of how many times this cabinet got shuffled around and stuff. So
yeah, it does say here when she made the transition to the Minister of Families, it said Gould was shuffled.
Shuffled, yeah.
It used the word shuffle.
So what I don't know is what the reasoning, the liberal reasoning was, not the public reasoning, but there's probably something that caused all of that to occur that we will never know about. And how that affects her relationship with the rest of the Liberal caucus, and then of course the Liberal supporters, that remains to be seen, which is why I can't wait for another poll to see how she stacks up. Is it going to be a three-way race, or is it just going to be a two-way race? I'm hoping it's going to be a three-way race. It would be nice to see somebody new, somebody fresh, as we had said, versus what we've talked about so far. But I have to learn more about her and find out where she is or where she stands, because that's the other point. I don't have a party platform for her. I don't know. Based on her track record, where she stands on carbon tax and where she stands on immigration and housing and all of the other, like you said, all the other ills of the country. So it's almost like we need to do more digging before we finally find out where she stands on the decision-making progress. Right now, I think she's got a legitimate shot. Because of her, she's almost an outsider, because we just haven't really heard much of her way out here anyway. Maybe in her home riding, maybe she's a rock star.
Well, sorry to cut you off, but it was there's an interesting little mini paragraph here. So when she became the leader of the government in the House of Commons, her Wikipedia page displays this, maybe hinting that she maybe had something to do with it, or this happened under her supervision or her watch. But if you recall back to September 2023, when the Canadian Parliament welcomed the Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, and during this visit, quote, all present in the House of Commons gave an elderly Ukrainian Canadian veteran 2 standing ovations, unaware that he had fought for a Nazi unit during World War II. Amid this international controversy and diplomatic embarrassment, Gould would delete a photo from social media of her encounter with Hunka, the gentleman who fought for the Nazis, and asked for the speaker's resignation and proposed the incident be stricken from official records. This motion was criticized and blocked by the opposition. So she tried to almost sweep that under the rugs. Maybe he's considering so the fact that it lists the argument and that she wanted this to be swept away, it's hard to really think otherwise, that she maybe, not saying that she intentionally did this knowing, but this, it happened under her watch, and she maybe wasn't as diligent or didn't vet this guy properly, and she's embarrassed by it. So if that's true, and that does kind of fall on her, that's a bit of an embarrassing thing to happen under the watch.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, the whole house was embarrassed that day, but. If she is requesting that it be stricken from the record and taking down any public photographs of her and the individual, I have to say, if she was unaware of the significance of the person they were honoring in the House of Commons, if she was unaware of the background story, the whole Nazi thing, and then was made aware, then I would have to say that pulling down the picture, asking for it to be stricken from the record, I would have to say that's probably the appropriate response. If she didn't know going in. If she did know going in, well, then it's all window dressing. And subject to criticism. But if she did know going in, or didn't know going in, that there was going to be a Nazi in the house today, I think it's appropriate that she asked for it to be taken off the record. Maybe she doesn't want that controversy to be attached to her, and why would you? That's not unreasonable.
No, absolutely not. But okay, so I think kind of switching gears with Gould. If I were to look at a way that she could secure a lot of votes, when she was the Minister for Internal Development, it says here, quote, as minister, Gould was responsible for implementing Canada's feminist international assistance policy, which targets gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls around the world. I saw that and I thought, now obviously she's running against another female MP in Chrystia Freeland, but I think she could potentially sway more of the female vote because she has kind of gone, I mean, forgive me, I'm not sure what Freeland has or hasn't done in this regard, but because she implemented this policy, and it says that, you know, Gould would assist in leading Canada's global efforts in combating the COVID-19 pandemic. But as a champion for gender equality, she also worked to fight hunger, eradicate poverty, and advance the sexual and reproductive health and rights of women. I have a feeling that could maybe sway more of you know, the general female vote towards her, who really are very passionate about that topic. So I think she could have a sway, maybe more than Chrystia Freeland in that regard.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful topic to gain public support with. The question, of course, that remains is, you know, how much of that, how much of her focus is domestic and how much of it is international.
Right.
Because if it's international, there's a price tag.
Yep.
And, you know, it's going to probably depend on the price of that price tag,
Yep.
whether or not her policies get any support. But if she's concentrated that position and concentrates it domestically, I can see her having a very favorable candidacy because, you know, $10 daycare is a big subject or has been a big subject in the country. So she could be popular for that. It's probably a more popular position than the what is it? Basic guaranteed living allowance. I forget. That's Carney's baby in the basket. There is where everybody gets a minimum,
Like a basic income type of thing?
basic income is.
Oh, okay. And he's announced that already?
He's previously announced it.
Okay.
In other that he's in favor of it.
In favor?
A guaranteed living
Basic
income.
income.
Basic living income. Yeah, he's announced that he's in favor of it, not specifically to the leadership race, but just in his public dealings previous. So between that and $10 daycare, I think daycare is probably the winning position. I think that basic living allowances, they're popular in some circles and very unpopular in other circles. So I think that might be a wedge, whereas everyone can get behind daycare.
I agree. Like, and going on the $10 day daycare is certainly helpful, but on the other flip side of thing, I know I've experienced very difficult trying to find daycare certainly in Western Manitoba, trying to find daycare spots. So if you can get $10 daycare, but you can't find spots, how is that going to help you? And to me, the overall, I'm not sure the overall, as far as availability across Canada, if that's the same circumstance across Canada, well, we'd love to take the $10 day, but we can't even find daycare, so we don't even have anywhere to put our children for the next 2 years.
If you think you're going to find $10 daycare in downtown Toronto, anytime in the ever, it's not at Regina. Oh yeah, you'll get $10 daycare in the smaller communities, but Vancouver and Toronto, good luck.
So that's all. My only point to that being is that the $10 daycare is great if you can find daycare that's available to take children, but because of the shortage of daycare, is that really much of a concern anymore for Canadians? I'm sure they're on board for it, but if they can't find the daycare in the first spot, well, I can't even find daycare. So what really does that do to me? It's kind of almost like the dental care. I know, for instance, and I'll just speak for my parents. They live in a small community, where unfortunately the dentist is not on board for the dental care. So their next closest, and it might have gotten improved now, but the next closest location was Winnipeg, which was basically 2.5 hours from where they are. So if you had a dentist appointment, I can go to Winnipeg for 2.5 hours to get some dental work done. It should be covered, but
for a 30-minute
clinic. Yeah. So like I said, as the Conservatives kind of said, sure, these Liberals have put in a lot of these policies, but how much is it actual helping Canadians, I guess, in that point? Like, obviously there's dental, I'm not going to deny. I'm sure a lot of people would love to have free dental care, but if all the dentists aren't on board for it, and there's only certain ones, then you're kind of bound to what dentists are able to, provide that free dental care. So, a little bit of one of those things where it sounds great, and telling Canadians, but how many Canadians are actually receiving it because of it's working for everybody? So, I don't have those numbers in front. I know the Conservatives have spitballed some numbers, but it sounds kind of low. But
well, she's officially the dark horse candidate, I think. Well, who do we got?
So
who do we got next?
We only got technically, one. I'm going to guess two because there was one that you just mentioned today. But I'll go ahead with Frank Baylis, former Liberal MP and businessman, announced his candidacy on January 9th, and he's focusing on fiscal responsibility and economic solutions. So once again, a name not probably recognized by a lot of people. He did announce his candidacy on January 9th, so he is in the race for the Liberal leadership race. So,
wow, and he was the first to announce.
I was going to say he was, I believe, the first one to announce.
So was cojones. He's got the biggest ones.
And he wants, and he's promoting kind of that economic stability. You said,
yeah.
So he kind of almost strikes me more as kind of like that blue liberal, red Tory kind of lane.
Yeah.
That could have a bit of a swing, perhaps, in the federal election, because I think fiscal responsibility and the massive deficit spending, I think, is a sore spot for a lot of people. So I can see how that would be a draw, in the on the federal level. But I don't know. When it comes to being the Liberal leader, I hate to say it, but the current direction of the Liberal Party is just it's been spend, and I don't see someone who's promoting fiscal responsibility. I don't see that person really having much of a draw, because it kind of goes against what almost everyone else in the party is kind of advocating for, or thinks that that's the direction that they should go down is a different one.
Well, and it's interesting that being that he was the first one that kind of declared his candidacy on January 9th, and if you go on, any type of media platforms or anything, you don't see a lot about Frank. Like, obviously, Karina was just announced on, which was, I believe, Saturday, just a couple of days ago. And between Mark and Chrystia and Karina, seen lots of different, media platforms, obviously, about their declaring their candidacy and some of the speeches and stuff they've had. But I haven't really seen hardly anything on Frank as of yet. So being that kind of, not a well-known in the Liberal Party, probably won't get as much, as far as media reaction, I guess, compared to the other three. But
yeah, I'm going to pretty much make it official. I think we can wipe him off the list. I don't think he's got a chance in heck.
Okay.
But I based that basically on the controversy that occurred with him and his, he had a medical supply company. And there was a huge controversy about his company was awarded a sole source contract, which is breaking a lot of rules. You can't sole source contracts. You have to get bidders and then pick the middle bid. And, they have procedures for all of these things when they start handing millions of dollars around. But for whatever reason, his company was chosen sole source, no bidders. They just handed his company a bunch of few $1 million.
Yeah.
And he said it was all on the up and up when the controversy broke, and it got swept under the rug. We all forgot about it eventually, but now he's back trying to run for prime minister. I would do a deep dive into this individual before I ever voted anything on his behalf. I think that's going to a bit of a taint his campaign a bit, a little bit of the stench of maybe there was, maybe there wasn't some wrongdoing back behind the scenes. So a lot of people are going to do some deep dives on him, and we'll probably find out a lot more as the race goes on.
And with that, our time is ticking down. So I think maybe in conclusion, you kind of already said it earlier, but I say maybe in conclusion, why don't we do our final,
well, I was going to say,
who we think will win and who do we believe should.
And let's just do basically the top three. I think that, we have Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, and Karina Gould. I think they would be, ones that I would say that are getting the most,
reasonable chance.
Reasonable chance that, as far as
and of course tomorrow someone new is going to jump into the race and invalidate all of this.
Then we can have part 2 of this conversation. But
sequel.
Yeah. So I'll give it up to you, Kevin. You already kind of mentioned your direction on who do you think is going to be the winner out of the three. So once again, Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, Karina Gould. Just kind of final remarks on if.
Well, we got to pick who we think's going to win and who we think should win.
Okay.
So who would give the Liberals the best chance, in my opinion. Well, first, of course, like you mentioned, I've already chosen Freeland as my Liberal. I think she's going to come out victorious.
Okay.
However, as for who should win the Liberal candidacy, I'm going to throw out all of them. I don't think any of them should win.
Fair enough.
But
it's an all uphill battle, is what you're saying. For all three of them.
Nobody on that list should win the Liberal candidacy. I think the person who should win the Liberal candidacy is not even on the list.
Melanie Joly.
Melanie Joly.
Melanie,
if you could hear me, get in, please.
Have you ever listened to what she said before or no? Have you listened to her or just visually?
I watch her on mute.
I mean, just visually.
Do you ever unmute your TV?
Politicians, they only get mute. I haven't heard a word a politician has said in 35 years.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay.
Colin, your thoughts on our three?
I think Gould is a good dark horse candidate, but I don't think she'll come close. I think it's going to come down to Freeland and Carney.
Yeah, it's uphill.
And I think Carney will get it.
Yeah.
I think Carney will get it. And who do I think? Melanie Joly!
Yes! Go, Melanie.
Okay, I will say this very, very quick. We kind of ran out of time, but
we have about 2 minutes left.
I have a very honorable mention for who I think should win, just because the policies that this MP, because we've missed an MP who is writing, Chandra Arya.
Yes.
You look at some of his policies.
Strong candidate, actually.
I would think he would be good because he rocks the boat in terms of what, because.
But he's no French, so he's dead.
No French, but you listen to these 6 bullet points really quick. Supports abolition of the monarchy.
Yes.
So that's a very left-leaning kind of position. But then seeks to lead a small, more efficient government.
Yeah.
That's now on the opposite side of the political spectrum. And then opposes diversity, equity, and inclusion quotas.
Huge.
And then propose taxing. Do you know how to pronounce that word?
Can't see it.
Expatriate citizens.
Expatriate.
Yeah. So he proposes taxing expatriate citizens. Would remove carbon pricing. So, but then he says, but then supports recognizing Palestine as a state. But then also says Trudeau's immigration policies have caused Canada to rely on cheap foreign labor. So I think he should win because he would just rock that Liberal Party boat so much, like the party would just turn upside down.
Yeah, he's the candidate of change. That's for sure.
Change.
That's
if you want change,
well, I think he just put in his $50,000 deposit to run as a part of the leadership race as I think today when we were talking.
Really?
I thought from just today or yesterday, I thought he announced that he was running. So. Because I was looking on information here, and he has intentions, but I didn't see that he was running. And then when I checked out his site, they were saying that they just made their deposit today.
He's got some big ideas now. How they filter through the Liberal supporters.
There's a lot of that will not go.
Yeah, I can't see it going, but he should.
He's my honorable mention just because of how much he would make the whole Liberal Party just capsize totally. They'd be like.
Yeah. Well, somebody has to flip the boat. That's exactly what the Liberals are looking for.
If you want different, that's different.
I think this whole discussion is made to be seen. We're out of time for today, but I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for today, and stay tuned for more interesting information.